Good evening. Welcome to the Shir tonight, Panorama of Halacha. And we have some very interesting questions. I'll start off with the following. A good lady was walking last week on Shabbos. She'd gone to shul, and she wears bifocals. And she doesn't need them for reading so much, more she needs them when she walks in the street. So as she's in shul, she lifts her glasses up to her forehead. And then she forgot about them. And she's in the middle of the street. And she realizes, oops, I've been, well, that's called carrying. So how does she uncarry? How is she going to wind down this act of carrying on the street? So you might think the simplest thing is just to bring them down to her nose. And that was her question. So she obviously asked after Shabbos, what would happen if it happens again? What would be the correct procedure? So very, very interesting. So let's start off step by step. First of all, what is the procedure if you're walking on Shabbos in the street and you realize you have something in your pocket? So here we have from the Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch and Siman Reish Samach Vav actually. So it says the following: if you're walking in the street and you realize you have something on your person, you should, if it's valuable, you can wait there till Motzei Shabbos. If that's not possible, then he says here, Matir Chagura Bershuk. You should release your belt, and the pouch will fall to the ground. And then you ask a goy to protect it, look after it until after Shabbos. Now, so this is the common wisdom, that if you realize that you have something on your person on Shabbos, so you don't stop. And you don't put it down in a normal way. I'm going to explain this. So the malacha of carrying on Shabbos involves the components of akira and hanocha. It was stationary, and you lifted it to make it mobile, no longer stationary. That's called akira. When you put it down, you brought it to stationary. That's called hanocha. If you do any parts of the malacha in an unusual way, then that's reduced it from being a full-fledged malacha min haTorah to be an isur d'Rabbanan. So now when you walk with something in your pocket, so as you move, you've kind of lifted the thing along with your person. That's called akira in a normal way. So when you're carrying something in your pocket, it's considered carrying as a normal way. So if you would stop, so then you've brought the article to halt in a normal way, and so you've done the finish of the malacha of carrying. Therefore, the wisdom is that you continue walking, and then you kind of lift it out of your pocket in an unusual way. In this way, the ending of the malacha, which is the hanocha, is done in a not usual way. So therefore, you haven't violated a din min haTorah. That's the general wisdom. The question here is that if you got this article on your person, you're carrying it, what would happen if you now bring it from carrying to wearing? So here, the Shmiras Shabbos Kol Chosar has this question, not exactly in the picture of wearing glasses perched on your forehead, but he's talking about if a person walks on Shabbos and realizes they have in their pocket, let's say a yarmulke, a kippah. So that's carrying. So how about if he takes it and puts it onto his head? So he says, no, that's not okay. Therefore, what should he do? He should cause the kippah to drop and then lift it up, and then he can put it on his head to take home. But he should not, in other words, to wind down the act of carrying by taking it from your pocket and putting it on your head is not considered a not normal way. That's called a normal way. His source is in the Igros Moshe. And Moshe was asked this question, and he brings some very interesting sources. There is a Gemara which talks about a person who's carrying ink. as he's walking on Shabbos with the ink, he writes on a piece of paper in his other hand. He writes something, and so the lashon of the Gemara is kesivoson zohi hanochoson. Taking the ink, which was mobile, and put it onto a piece of paper, that's called hanocha. Similarly, if you would take you're walking the street and you realize you've got a pretzel in your pocket. If you take the pretzel out of your pocket and you put it in your mouth, that's called hanocha. You've brought it. It's now settled. In a sense, that's the normal place to put it. It's therefore it's considered stable rather than mobile. So this is Reb Moshe's mahalach that taking the kippah out of your pocket and putting it on your head, that's considered hanocha. It's as if you put it down. So you've got the smaller picture and the bigger picture. In the bigger picture, the kippah is still moving, but in the smaller picture, it is now sitting on your head, so it's relaxed. It's the same thing with the glasses. The glasses were on your forehead. Now, if you put them on your nose, so then that is the normal way. They've been brought to a normal state, and that's called a hanocha, and therefore that would not be allowed. So that's actually the tshuva of Reb Moshe I found fascinating. His and his lomdus is really, I found it very, very interesting tshuva. But that's the bottom line is that to take those glasses, to put them from carrying state to wearing state, that's considered hanocha, and it's not allowed to be done on Shabbos. Now, I repeated this concept in this shir Friday night, and one of the Talmidei Chachamim in our shul, it says that you have another. If you're walking on Shabbos and you realize you have something in your pocket, I have an advice for you. There's something called a mokim p'tur, which means it's neither rishus harabim, like the floor, nor is it rishus hayochid, and it's not even a karmelis. It's mokim p'tur. A mokim p'tur is permitted. You're allowed to put something down on a mokim p'tur on Shabbos in the street. So, as an alternative to putting this whatever you have in your pocket to fall to the floor, if you see that there is a mokim p'tur available, put it on the mokim p'tur. Once it's there, then you can take it from it and take it to a safe place with less endowed amas, whatever you do. But I'd like to spend a couple of minutes about what is a mokim p'tur, yeah, because that can be a very helpful solution. So, a rishus hayochid is something which is at least 4 tefachim wide, 4 tefachim square, and 10 tefachim high. So these are very common. I don't know in your part of the world, but this part of the world, this is a very common thing. It's like, say, the post office for the telephones. So you've got here a box which is more than 4 tefachim, both sides. That on top of that is a rishus hayochid. So to put something on Shabbos onto there or off there would be an aver, just like taking from your front garden. Then we've got this narrow little thing, which is less than, it measures about, let's say, 4 inches by 7 inches. Let's say it's certainly less than 4 tefachim square. Actually, it does not matter whether it does have 10 tefachim height or not. Because it does not have the area of 4 by 4 tefachim, this remains a mokim p'tur. So if you, let's say, this lady would see she's got her glasses problem, she sees one of these, she could take her glasses, put it down on the top of this thing, and that's mutter. Once it's there, she can then put it on, and that's also allowed to put it, because the mokim p'tur is compatible with Rishus harabim, it's compatible with Rishus hayochid. So you'll have to put it down on this thing. Now, these are quite common, these cupboards, which are for various utilities. And I measured this. This was just a fraction less than 4 tefachim. And you have to kind of guess. But so the one outside Beis Lubavitch is more than 4 tefachim. I once measured it. But this is a fraction less than 4 tvachim. So then this would also be a mokum patur. Now, then I was walking home Friday night. I was looking out. What's a mokum patur and what's going to be a caramelist? And so this is there's a cafe on the way down from shul to my house, and I saw this planter. Now this planter is more than 4 by 4 tvachim. 4 by 4 tvachim is, how much is it? 35 centimeters, something like that. 36 centimeters. So this is measures more than 4 by 4 tvachim. It does not have a height of 10 tvachim. This is what's called a caramelis. So to put something from the street into this would be an isur d'rabbanan. So again, the one which has less area than 4 by 4, that's a mokum patur and is mutter, is permitted. It's compatible with Rosh Hashanah, Rosh Hashanah, whereas a caramelis is midrabanon, not compatible, neither Rosh Hashanah nor Rosh Hashanah. Therefore, to put the glasses down on this planter would not be allowed midrabanon. Right. I think that I felt that was worth making the effort and making these photographs to share these examples of what could be a solution. Okay, what do we have here? Okay, let's go on to the next. I just want to share with you one more thing. This is a bit of a funny one. I was walking on Shabbos once. It must have been after a Yom Tov, because because I had my credit card in my shirt pocket, and so I did the shoving it out of my pocket, kelachayad, and it landed on the floor. And then I pushed it slowly, less than dial down at a time, and I pushed it and shoved it down a drain. And after Shabbos, would call the company, I called the bank and say I lost my card. I felt that was certainly safe. My reservations about this afterwards, having thought about the halacha more carefully, is that the drains are, inside those drains is more than 4, the sewers are more than 4 by 4 tefachim wide, and therefore the sewers actually are a Rosh Hashanah. They've got depth of 10 tefachim, so it was just a post box into a sewer Rosh Hashanah, which I don't think was okay. So was showing that you shouldn't do that. Just check your pockets before Shabbos. Okay. Next, common question: whether a woman is in a state of pregnancy is allowed to visit a grave on a father's yard site. So there is a general custom that a pregnant woman does not go to a Beis HaKvaros. Now the top is here from the Nita Gabriel, and he says if there's a need, there's a yard side, Kibrit Tzadikim, so then one does not make such an issue. So in the notes he says that this whole idea of not going to a Beis HaKvaros does not have that a pregnant woman wouldn't go to a cemetery is not so well founded in halachic sources. There is an idea of not exposing herself to a place of tumah, because from the Shevet Musa. It is a Jewish custom, so we're not going to dismiss it out of hand. But when there are needs, a specific need, so let's say going on a yard site is something which can be considered a need, then that would be permitted. In the note Ches, Rabbi Tziner says that we have the other way around. We have a woman in the state of Nida would also avoid going to Beis HaKvaros, and still, when there would be a special occasion, that she would go. There is the idea that in a state of a personal tumah, not to be compounded with the tumah which prevails in the Beis HaKvaros. Here it's a different cheshbon, but there is this minig. But if there's a need, one would take the lenient view. Okay, let's move on to the next question, and that is, I know I shared this with you last week, this sunny porch in front of the house. So I got a very similar question, and this is from somewhere in continental Europe. They have their rubbish collection is on Tuesdays and on Shabbos. This is the shul, actually. See the mezuzah there, and it opens straight onto the pavement. So they have been taking the liberty of putting out their rubbish on Friday, but then that's been arousing complaints from the neighbors. So he's asking, is there a way that he's allowed to put stuff onto the steps? So let's say if the collection is early morning, so let's say if he early morning or the night before puts it out on the steps, and then the goyim would collect it before people come to shul. This is his question. So it's very similar to what we discussed last week, and we'll read this inside perhaps. So here we have from Simon Shin Samach Gimel. There is an idea of if you have a mavu, that's like an alley, which has got 3 walls, and the 4th wall, the 4th side, is open to the main road. So that can be made that you're allowed to carry there by either posting a lechi, which is a vertical post, or a koira, or a horizontal beam across the opening. But that, he says, is only permitted by a movu, which means an alley. An alley is longer than it is wide. However, a chotzer, which is a courtyard, which is open on the 4th side, there it would not be enough to use the methods of lechi or koira, but rather you'd need to have a panel which is 4 tefachim wide, and that would have to kind of encroach upon the opening. That's one solution, by having a panel of 4 tefachim. Alternatively, to have 2 panels on either side, each one just a mashahu wide. There should be 10 tefachim wide. So here we have, let's come back to our picture. So whether it's the sunny picture or the not so sunny picture, so you got here, effectively, you've got an area, a niche, which has got 3 walls. In order to be able to carry there, you'd have to put up a post, either a panel of 4 tefachim, which would not be so terribly convenient, or you can have a little thin post on either side. A thin post on either side to kind of designate that here's the end of this niche, and here's where the street starts. I told him that he could actually take a piece of, the coving kind of idea you have of plastic sometimes, where you have a corner in the house and you want to protect it or from damage, from bumping. So you get these plastic or aluminum corners. So I said, you can use one of those. And I said further, you know what? You could even take a piece of thick sellotape, Scotch tape, and do it and stick it over there on either side. I mean, after all, the halacha says if it's a mashu, all you need is a strip, which is a mashu, a tiny bit of width, and it has to be 10 tefachim. So I told him you could put some sticky stuff on either side, and that would be his 2 panels. And the inspiration was one. It is written in Poskim when it said earlier about the idea of having a lechi. In earlier times, there was sometimes just a lick of paint. They take a piece of a paintbrush and paint a straight vertical line, and that would be their lechi. So here it doesn't use the word lechi. It still says about pasid, but it says rechavan mashu. So I felt that was adequate. Now, the next question which you're going to ask is, you're putting out your garbage over here, and you're putting out there that the goyim should take it. Is it not that you are kind of giving them work to do on Shabbos, to carry out from your premises to the street? So this question of putting out the rubbish in your premises, ready for the refuse collection, to take it on Shabbos. So this is addressed by the Rav Moshe Sternbuch, who's now the Avbezdin of the Badatz in Shalayim, Aved Charedis, used to live, well, he originally was known as the London Ilui. He lived many years in South Africa, very involved in Kiruv Vinyonim. And so in his Shuvas, he has a lot of discussion about that, about Kiruv questions. But here is he's addressing this idea about the garbage collection happening on Shabbos. Do you have to stop them taking your stuff? So he said, I don't see any problem. Of course, you're happy that he's taking it, but he's doing it on his own volition. You're not actually benefiting from his melacha. You're benefiting from the absence of the nuisance, but you're not benefiting. You're not enjoying. It's not as if delivering something and you're enjoying the stuff which he delivers, which is another story. Here, there's a nuisance, and he's taking away the nuisance, and you are relieved by the absence of that nuisance. That he's doing it out of his duty. Now, it's true, he says, you're paying taxes, but you've never given instructions that the collection should happen on Shabbos. As far as you're concerned, you'd be quite happy for them to come on Friday or Sunday. And therefore, there's no need, as far as he's concerned, to start saying, no, I don't want you to come into my premises to collect the garbage. It's okay. And the point of elsewhere saying, if a guy walks out from your premises with a package, oh, but you probably sent him on a mission. Well, that's not true here, because everyone, from this part of the world knows that there is an idea of a garbage collection, and it happens. It's employed by the local council, and they all understand that it's not your bidding; they're doing their duty when it suits them. Okay, so that's solved that question about the collection being done on Shabbos, which we didn't discuss last week. Now, there's one more point which we may have touched on, and that is that there is a concept of pi tikro yored v'sosim. Sometimes we have the idea that this, instead of having to have a post here, we can say the lip of the ceiling is seen in lomdas as if it comes down. So then you could ask this question, perhaps we should say that the lip of this arch should be the pi tikra, and it should serve to close up and not need to have even any panels down the bottom. But that's actually discussed also in Shulchan Aruch, and saying that you should not rely on the concept of pi tikra of yored v'sosim in this little bit of space, because it's very confusing, because it would only work if there's more than 4 tefachim. And sometimes the veranda in front of the porch is less than 4 tefachim, and therefore it's something not to be relied upon. So that's why we're not using the pi tikra solution. Instead, we're talking about putting up a thin post on either side. And as I said, the sticky tape, that would be enough. Okay, let's go on. So someone asks a question: does kiddush in shul count for su'udah shlishis? So to explain this question, we have a mitzvah of having 3 meals on Shabbos. There is a concession that the 3rd meal does not need to be a full meal. It can also be a little bit less. The lashon of the Gemara is minei targima. What exactly does minei targima mean? Does it mean something like cake or porridge? Does it mean something like vegetables? Does it mean fruit? There are different opinions in the Gemara, in Halacha, what exactly is minei targima. But there is a concession that the Suda Shlishis do not need to be the full meal like the other 2. So now the question is, can I have Suda Shlishis with its concessions before Suda Shnia? So can I have the concession meal at 1 o'clock and have the full meal at 3 o'clock or 2 o'clock, whatever? That is the question. So this is something which actually the Rebbe addressed. There's a famous sikha about why Chabad were not so particular about Suda Shlishis. That's in Chelik Chof Aleph, Parshas Beshalach, I believe. But here, this is a note from that sikha. It quotes here from that in Sefer HaSichas that the Rebbe Rashab, as we know, would daven very long. So in the winter, he would do the following. He would, when he finished davening, he would make kiddush and have a bit of mezainis. it doesn't say the word Mizonos, but he would have kiddush, however, with Yotze kiddush. Then daven mincha, and then before the shkia, would then wash and have a proper meal. So the Rebbe is suggesting that his Yotze the Suda Shlishis with this Mizonos, which he had with the Kiddush Mokim Suda. He refers to a discussion about this, that it's a Tzedek, who has a correspondence with about this with the Divrei Nehemiah, with Nehemiah Dubrovna. So on the left of your screen, you have here a little bit of a quote from the Tzemach Tzedek, which the Rebbe refers to. It says, possibly one who has mini targimo, which is Mizonos if you have them earlier, before midday, as is common, and then have the Sudas Shacharis, to have the main meal after in the afternoon. So perhaps you're B'doichik the idea of Shalosh Sudas, because you had bread for 2 meals, and one you had mini targimo, even though they are not in the normal sequence. The Tzemach Tzedek had a colleague called Nehemiah Fradkin, who lived in Dubrovna, and they correspond a lot. And so this conversation, the Nehemiah was more opposed to it, and the Tzemach Tzedek was more inclined to accept this. This counts as Suda Shlishis, that the concession can be had even though it's not in the correct sequence. That's basically the discussion. I just want to share with you, I know it's not much of Shabbos, but the Rebbe Farbrengen would be at 1:30. So davening would finish typically at 12 o'clock, and then the Farbrengen would be by 1:30. And there were times in the winter where the Farbrengen would, when I was learning in 770, Koil or whatever, so the Farbrengen sometimes went so late, they went into the Shkia, and really, you couldn't really have time for eating sort of Shabbos afterwards in a regular way. What people did is another story, but yeah. So I would go to a relative of mine who lived a couple of blocks away, go there before the Farbrengen, make Kiddush, and I believe I also washed and had just a little bit of something to be Yotze Sudas Shabbos. And then I had a debate with my cousin, whose house it was. Is the Rebbe's Farbrengen Suda Shniya or Suda Shlishis? So the more Chassidische Bochrim would not wash before the Rebbe's Farbrengen. And I was less Chassidische, washing before the Farbrengen. So he was of the opinion that the Rebbe's Farbrengen is Suda Shniya, and I was saying it was Suda Shlishis. Punkt by that Farbrengen, the Rebbe told him to sing Bnei Echava. So right. Let's move on. Okay, so now here's an interesting thing. So someone asked if there's someone who, for whatever reason, did not daven Ma'ariv or did not say Atachin Antonim Ma'ariv. So we know you're not allowed to do any melacha until you say Baruch HaMavdil. Now, is there any advantage if instead of just saying Baruch HaMavdil ben Kodesh L'Chol to say the full text of Atachin Antonim? That was his question. So again, a person didn't say Atachin Antonim in Shmon Esrei, wants to do the right thing now. Is there an advantage of saying Atachin Antonim, the full 6 lines in the Siddur, or is Baruch HaMavdil ben Kodesh L'Chol just as good? So here's an interesting thing. You have in Kitzur Shulchan, where it says you're not allowed to do Malacha before Havdalah, and if a woman is not going to daven Ma'ariv, she wants to light some candles in the house, be able to see what she's doing, washing the dishes. So he says she should say Baruch HaMavdil ben Kodesh L'Chol, Baruch HaMavdil ben Kodesh L'Chol. So this is very interesting that he is saying that when we say you should say Baruch HaMavdil, it doesn't just mean the one line Baruch HaMavdil ben Kodesh L'Chol. It means also to say the 3 Havdalas, as well. And then even to finish off just without Hashem's name, Baruch instead of Baruch Atah Hashem, Baruch HaMavdil ben Kodesh L'Chol. So that's very interesting. There is such an opinion that when we're talking about an abbreviated Havdalah, it means abbreviated with the 3 Havdalas. But here in the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, it's noted Now, the Alter Rebbe does not mention anything of the sort. He says it's enough to say, Baruch HaMavdil min Kodesh l'Chayil. And so you're asking, is there an advantage of saying Atachin Antonu? Well, according to this opinion, that you should be saying all the three $3.5, then there is an advantage of saying Atachin Antonu, which you have the $3.5 are included in that text. But according to the Alter Rebbe's Psak, it's not necessary because Baruch HaMavdil min Kodesh l'Chayil is adequate. Let's move on. All right, so here someone's asking that they hope to have a Sefer Torah, but they're not sure that they'll get a minyan so regularly. So what's the procedure if you have a Sefer Torah and you don't have a minyan? So I believe we once discussed this, but this is from the Nesirim B'Steach Shlichus. So when you don't have a minyan, you are able to take out a Sefer Torah and you can read the parsha without brachas. Don't call up anyone. And so basically the point is that you can take out a Sefer Torah and do a reading without the brachas before and after. Having said that, so I think I mentioned last time also when this came up, that some shluchim have told me that they find it, and their people find it very meaningful that when there is no minyan, so then they all sit down with a chumash and go through the parsha, discuss it in a less formal way, in an informal way, and they find that very, very fulfilling. So it's your choice. Right, let's move on. So here is a question which two people asked me, a very similar question. There's an old age home. They want someone to come in and make kiddush for them. It's far from his place. So could he go there, make kiddush for the old people, which is going to be, let's say, at 6 o'clock or later even, and then not be Mikal Shabbos and get back into the car and drive home? So this question was addressed by Reb Shlomo Zalman and others, where Reb Shlomo Zalman had a story that someone would go every week to an old age home to make kiddush for them. He then moved house to another part of town. And so he was asking this question, could he keep up his slot at the old age home, but drive home? And basically the answer is no. That once you've said kiddush for them, you would not be able to switch back into a chayil. You're accepted. It becomes your Shabbos for you also. So here, there would be a solution that he could have someone give him a ride. So although he has to accept Shabbos, but he could have someone who hasn't accepted Shabbos open the car door, and he'd sit in the car, and they'd drive him home, and they'd open the car door at the other end, so he's not doing any melacha in himself, he's just being driven home. That would be permitted if necessary. The other question, which was so similar to this, was someone who's a shliach on campus and is saying kadish, and when this week the students are away, so he does not have his regular minyan on campus. There is a minyan the other side of town, it's half an hour away, and he wants to say kadish, so he would like to go there and to be able to drive back. To go there and be there for Mincha and for Ma'ariv and say his Kadeshim and then drive back. So I told him, once you've answered Baruch Hu, you're nabbed. It's Shabbos for you. So he says, okay, what happens if I go out of the room for Baruch Hu? So I said back to him, though, if the community that have accepted Shabbos at whatever it is, at 7 o'clock, and you're right there, even if you're other side of town, possibly you should be not doing Malacha once the local minyan. You can argue this half an hour away maybe not be local. At any rate, but if you're right there, for you to get in the car afterwards, I felt was totally inappropriate. It wouldn't be appropriate for the Lubavitcher rabbi to get into the car after Friday night services. I think it was totally out of order. So it was half an hour's walk. Okay, so you have your weekly exercise. Okay. Someone came over to me and said it was the 10th night of the Omer, I hadn't gone to shul yet, and my wife said, Hayoim asora yomim shehem. She faltered, and I said, Shehem shavua yomim, shavua echod shloisha yomim lo'omer. Then he said, "Oh, I've been so helpful to my wife, but have I now disabled myself from being able to count Sfira when I come to shul by Ma'ariv, because I've already counted the Omer." So these are two parts. Yeah, what he said. Actually, there is an opinion which says that that's the way you should be counting Sfira, to say so there's so many weeks and so many days. So that would count as Sfira Omer. The saving factor is he did not say the word Hayoim. She had said the word Hayoim. He didn't say the word Hayoim. Here we have from Simatov Peites, Im loy Omar Hayoim. If you did not say the word Hayoim, you just said simply, you didn't say it is. You said, Asora Yomim lo Omer. That doesn't count, because you have to kind of spell out, you're counting, today is so and so many days of the Omer. And therefore, since he did not say the word Hayoim, he is able to count with a brocha after he davens Ma'ariv. That would be okay, because he did not say the word Hayoim. But he heard her saying Hayoim, but he had no intention to be Yotze when he heard. He had every intention to make it to count it on his own. Therefore, he would be allowed to. Now, just this. The Alter Rebbe talks about having a kavanah not to be Yotze, but we once had a couple of years ago in Geman called Moshe Chanunu, and he had written in a sefer as a young Geman. He explained how whenever there's a minhag, if it's the standard, although the Alter Rebbe says you have to have a kavanah not to be Yotze, he says if the minhag is that you make your own bracha, that is as if you had the kavanah not to be Yotze. So that was a saving factor. Okay, we're going to finish a little bit early. If he says Hayoim in English, you mean today is. Yes, Sfira Soima works in any language. Had he said today is a week and 3 days of the Omer, then he would not be able to count later. Right, this is the last thing, and just not a question, but it was something which I found, I was editing something, and it came up a very, very interesting thing. We are familiar that we have the Oshamnu, which is now it's back into daily usage. A couple of interesting things. There's colons, yeah? I think those are called colons. After four Aleph Beis Gimel Dalet colon. Then till Tes, again a colon. And then till Kashin Oiref, then a colon. And this becomes very noticeable on Yom Kippur. Yeah, everyone, so it's clearly divided into 4 sections. And so what's the logic of the division the way it is? Separate question is, why over the whole Aleph base, Tov gets 3 innings, Tiyavnu, Ta'inu, Titanu. Now, I'm going to give you the answer, but meanwhile, I'll just show you how this on the left is the first print of the Alter Rebbe's Siddur, which we have, and you can see there that there's no such distinction. Is that right? It's certainly not so noticeable. The Baron of Doifi, there doesn't seem to be any difference. The second one beneath that is from the print of Tov Kuf Ayin Vov, 3 years after the Alter Rebbe passed away, and here clearly again there's no distinction. They're all colons. The one which we have beneath that is, I think, from Slavita, Tov Kuf Tzadik Vov. So that would be 13, whatever. No, forget it. 1730, 35 or something. So again here, there's no distinction. It's just dots. And then we have over here, we have on the 4th one or the 5th one, whatever, here it already has the colons as we have over here. So the one which I showed you first is from the Torah Ursida, which was published around Tofresh Memtes. The one beneath this is from Jitomir Tofresh Chofhei. And why this is significant to me is that the ones which are closer to the Alter Rebbe's times do not have this feature. They were incorporated at a later stage. And from my research, I've seen there's many little changes which have been imported from other Sidurim, and they were incorporated around Tofresh Chofhei, that period, and then they became part of our Siddur. So when Rav Lavut publishes his Siddur, they are part of it, but in the earlier editions, they weren't there. So there's a lot of stuff which was imported from Avodas Yisrael, from other good Sidurim, but to say it's traced to the Alter Rebbe, that's not true, but it's still Minhag Yisrael, which is worth researching. I want to show, before telling you the answer, I want to tell you one more thing. You see here, we pronounce the word Ti'avnu, yes? Whereas in the first print, it's with the comments, To'avnu, and the second print is also To'avnu, whereas in this fourth print, which we have, it's Ti'avnu, it's changed. So who is responsible for changing that word from pronouncing with the comments to a chirik? I don't know the answer, but you can see clearly it was changed. But basically, the answer is fascinating, and that is this sefer is called Avas Torah, and he says the following: the first one has got 4 letters, that's a Daled. The next one has got 5, that's a Hey. The next one has got 10, from your Atznu till Kishinu is 10 letters, and that's Yud. And then you have another 5. So those are the letters of the word Yehuda. Yud and Hey and Daled and Hey. And then he has a cheshbon of the remes for the Vov also. You have, let's say, a few double ones. You got Dibar Nadofi is double, Tfal Nesheka is double. Somehow Kishina Oirif is double. Somehow you identify some doubles. But meanwhile, we have the remes for the name Yehuda. Why would Yehuda be mentioned? Why would it be a remes for Yehuda in Oshamnu? Well, think of the word vidui, which means confession, and the word Yehuda in it has got the word hoida, which is acknowledgement and confession. And Yehuda was the first one who did something wrong, and he confessed. The Gemara which we learned in Sota just now, Mi Goram Yehuda Sheyoide, etc. So Yehuda is like a leader in the ability to acknowledge, I did something wrong and I asked for forgiveness, and therefore in the Oshamnu there is a remes to that quality, to the name of Yehuda, and that's also would explain why it's, instead of having 22 letters of the Aleph base, it's got an extra 2 with the letter Tov to bring up to 24 to match with the to make it 24 for the letters of Yud K and Daled and Hey of the name Yehuda. So I thought you'd find that interesting, and I wish you a good evening, and a good chodesh, and alle gute Sachen. Kol tov.